dinner table, candlelight, smiles from people he trusted, and a secret so dangerous that it froze the room, because the threat against Michael Jackson wasn't coming from the outside. It was already inside the house. What was whispered that night would haunt him for years. Why did he stay silent? And who was truly trying to destroy the man the world loved? Tonight, you'll finally hear the story no one ever told. Michael Jackson. Christmas. A hidden attack. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our emotional stories about Michael Jackson. Neverland was glowing. Thousands of tiny white lights wrapped around the trees. Soft music floated through the halls, and the smell of cinnamon and pine filled the air. Children laughed near the fireplace. Staff moved quietly with trays of food. Everything felt warm, safe, magical. Michael Jackson stood near the grand window, watching the snow machines dust the garden outside. For a moment, he allowed himself to believe in peace. The dangerous era had consumed him for months. Interviews, rehearsals, travel, pressure from every direction. This night was supposed to be different. No cameras, no executives, no stage, just Christmas. He adjusted his red velvet jacket and turned toward the dining room where his closest circle had gathered. A few friends, trusted collaborators, members of his team, and family. Candles flickered over crystal glasses. Laughter bounced softly off the walls. Michael took his seat at the head of the table. "Thank you all for being here," he said warmly. "Tonight is about love." They raised their glasses. To Michael, he smiled, that gentle, childlike smile the world recognized. But something inside him felt unsettled. He couldn't explain it. A tightness in his chest. A quiet sense that the night was fragile. Dinner began. Conversation flowed. Stories of old tours, childhood memories, laughter echoing beneath the chandelier. Michael listened more than he spoke, enjoying the sound of life around him. Then he noticed it. Across the table, one of the guests, a man he had trusted for years, wasn't eating. His hands trembled slightly. His eyes never quite met Michael's. Michael's smile faded. He leaned closer to the man. "You all right?" he whispered. The man swallowed. I need to speak to you. Alone." Something in his voice made Michael's heart shift. They excused themselves quietly and stepped into the hallway, the music from the dining room fading behind them. "What is it?" Michael asked. The man's face was pale. "Someone here tonight is not who you think they are." Michael froze. "What do you mean?" The man's voice dropped. "There's been talk, dangerous talk. They believe if your voice disappears, certain problems disappear with it." Michael's breath caught. "Are you saying—" "Yes," the man whispered. "There's a plan. Not tonight, but soon, and it involves people inside your own circle." The world seemed to tilt. Michael pressed his hand to the wall, steadying himself. "Who?" he asked. The man shook his head violently. "I can't say it yet. But you need to understand something. Michael, you are not safe. Not even here." The sound of laughter drifted from the dining room, unaware, innocent. Michael closed his eyes. This was Christmas. This was supposed to be peace. He opened them again, his voice barely audible. "Thank you for telling me." They returned to the table as if nothing had happened. Michael lifted his glass. He smiled. He laughed. He played his role. But inside, something had shattered. That night, while the world sang carols and celebrated love, Michael Jackson discovered that someone was quietly preparing to destroy him. And the true battle for his life had just begun. The rest of the dinner unfolded like a performance Michael had already mastered. He laughed at the right moments. He thanked the staff. He complimented the food. But inside his chest, his heart was racing so loudly, he feared someone at the table might hear it. Every face around him now felt unfamiliar. Every smile carried weight. Michael began watching closely, the way one watches a room when something precious has been lost. He noticed the smallest details. The fork that froze midair, the glance that lingered too long, the sudden silence when he stood to refill his glass. The music from piano in the corner sounded distant, as if coming from another world. When dessert was served, Michael excused himself again, this time stepping out onto the balcony where cold December air kissed his face. His reflection in the glass looked older than he felt. Who would want me gone? He wondered. And why now? Behind him, soft footsteps approached. It was Karen, one of his longest trusted assistants, the woman who had organized this very dinner. You vanished, she said gently. Everything okay? Michael hesitated, then chose his words carefully. Do you trust everyone here? Karen's brow creased. Of course. These are your people. Michael studied her eyes. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we know the least, he whispered. Karen opened her mouth to respond when suddenly a loud crash echoed from the dining room, a tray slipping from a waiter's hands, plates shattering against marble. The sound made Michael flinch. The tension snapped. He walked back inside, the warmth of the room feeling artificial now, like stage lights after the curtain falls. As the guests gathered around the broken glass, Michael caught the eye of the man who had warned him earlier. The man subtly nodded toward the far hallway. Michael followed. They stepped into the library, a quiet space lined with books, old photographs, and memories that belonged to a different, simpler time. Tell me more, Michael said. The man's voice trembled. Someone here has been feeding information to people who don't want you speaking anymore. They believe your influence is inconvenient. Michael's hands clenched. Speaking about what? The man hesitated. Children, peace, power. You reach places they don't. Michael closed his eyes. He had always known his message made certain people uncomfortable, but danger had never felt this close. Do they want me silent? Michael asked. Or gone? The man didn't answer. He didn't have to. A chill crept into Michael's bones. They returned to the party, and Michael made a quiet decision. He would observe, listen, and say nothing, but he would remember everything. As the evening stretched on, he noticed patterns. One guest repeatedly stepping outside to take calls. Another leaving early without saying goodbye. Karen whispering urgently with one of the security supervisors. The house that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a maze of unseen doors. Later that night, after the guests began to leave, Michael walked the halls alone. Christmas lights shimmered across the walls, reflections of warmth he no longer felt. He stopped at the door of his private studio and sat on the floor back against the wall. I wanted one night of peace, he thought. Just one. A soft knock came at the door. It was his mother. She knelt beside him and touched his cheek. You look like the world just broke your heart, she said. Michael swallowed. Sometimes I think the world doesn't want me here, he whispered. She pulled him into her arms. The world doesn't get to decide that. Her words steadied him, but they did not erase the fear. Near midnight, as the last of the staff finished cleaning, Michael summoned his security chief, David, to his office. I need you to run background checks on everyone who is here tonight, Michael said quietly. Discreetly, David's eyes sharpened. Why? Michael paused, then said, Because someone believes that the world will be better without me. David nodded slowly. I'll start immediately. As David left, Michael opened a small notebook he kept hidden in his drawer. He wrote down names times behaviors, everything he had observed. It felt like betrayal to even think this way. But something deeper told him that survival sometimes demands courage in the form of suspicion. Outside, the night grew still. Michael walked to the window again and looked out over Neverland. The lights, the trees, the silence. For years he had carried the world's love on his shoulders. Now he was carrying its shadow. And before the next sunrise, he would learn something that would shake his understanding of loyalty forever. Morning arrived slowly over Neverland, as if even the sun hesitated to interrupt what had begun the night before. Michael had not slept. He remained seated at the small desk by the window, the notebook open, his handwriting filling the pages with names, times, impressions, questions. The world outside glowed softly with dew and frost, but inside him the night still raged. A knock at the door. David, the security chief, entered with a tight expression. Michael, we need to talk. Michael closed the notebook and looked up. David's voice was low. I found something. They sat across from each other. One of the guests last night, David continued, has been in repeated contact with a private consulting firm that doesn't officially exist. Their work involves risk management for powerful clients. Michael's heart pounded. What kind of risk? David hesitated. People who speak too loudly. Michael whispered. Who? David slid a paper across the desk. Michael read the name. The air left his lungs. It was someone he loved. Someone he had trusted for years. Someone who had sat at his Christmas table and raised a glass to him only hours before. He leaned back, his chest burning. No, he whispered. That's not possible. David nodded grimly. I didn't want to believe it either. Michael stood and walked to the window, his reflection pale against the glass. Why would you do this to me? He thought. The memory of their laughter night before now felt poisonous. He dismissed David and walked alone to the halls of Neverland, every step heavy. The decorations still hung, the trees still shimmered, but the magic had collapsed into something hollow. He found the man in the garden near the lake, standing alone, staring at the water. Michael approached quietly. Good morning, Michael said. The man turned, startled, then smiled. Couldn't sleep. Too much joy in the air, I guess. Michael studied him. The familiar face, the eyes he had trusted for so long. Walk with me, Michael said. They strolled along the path beside the water. Last night, Michael said carefully, someone told me I wasn't safe. The man froze for half a second, just long enough for Michael to see it. Who would say such a thing? He asked lightly. Michael stopped walking. Someone who knows more than I do. Silence stretched between them. Michael turned to him. Are you part of this? The man laughed, but it was thin. Michael, you're tired. The pressure is getting to you. Michael's voice broke. Please, don't lie to me. The man's smile vanished. His shoulders sagged. I never wanted you to find out like this, he whispered. The world tilted. You were going to let them hurt me? Michael said. They never said hurt, the man replied. They said remove you from the conversation. Michael felt something collapse inside his chest. All those years, he whispered. All that trust. The man's eyes filled. They told me if I didn't cooperate, my family would suffer. Michael closed his eyes. Fear had infected everything. The man stepped back. I'm so sorry. Michael said nothing. He watched the man walk away, disappearing among the trees, a chapter of his life ending in silence. Later that day, Michael locked himself in his studio. The piano stood untouched. The walls echoed with memories. He sat on the floor, arms wrapped around his knees. This is what betrayal feels like, he thought. Night fell again. Michael gathered only a few people he still trusted, his mother, David, Karen, and 2 others. He told them everything. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, his mother took his hands. Then you listen to your heart now, she said, and you protect your life. Michael nodded. He knew what he had to do. Before dawn, the man was quietly removed from the property and cut from all access to Michael's world. No confrontation. No headlines. Just a door that would never open again. But the damage had already been done. Michael stood on the balcony as the sun rose and whispered. They were so close. Karen stepped beside him, but they failed. Michael looked at her. They've only just begun. Far beyond the gates of Neverland, in places he could not see, others were already adjusting their plans. The Christmas night had revealed the first truth. The real war for Michael Jackson's life was only beginning. Neverland no longer felt like a sanctuary. Even after the man's quiet removal, something in the air remained unsettled, like the echo of a storm that had not yet passed. Michael walked its halls with new eyes. Every shadow seemed longer, every sound sharper, every face uncertain. He had trusted love to protect him. Now he understood that love also made him vulnerable. Late one night, Michael sat alone in the small theater, the screen blank, the seats empty. He stared at the place where children usually laughed and sang, and he felt the weight of everything he had built pressing down on his chest. Why does my life always feel like a stage? He thought. His thoughts were interrupted by a knock. David entered, holding a folded paper. This was delivered at the gate, he said. No name. Michael unfolded it slowly. Inside was a single sentence. Christmas was only the beginning. His hands began to tremble. They know, Michael whispered. David nodded. They want you to know they know. The next days passed in a blur of tension. Michael's schedule was quietly cleared. His movements restricted. Security doubled. Phones were screened. Staff rotated. But fear is not something that could be locked outside. Michael began waking in the middle of the night, heart racing, the feeling of unseen eyes following him even in his dreams. Sometimes he would walk the grounds until sunrise just to remind himself that he was still free. One dawn, he stood by the lake watching the water ripple in the wind. I wanted to heal the world, he whispered. I didn't know it would try to destroy me. Karen stood beside him. You are not alone, she said. But Michael knew something deeper. The danger was no longer invisible. 3 days after the note, another message arrived, this time delivered to one of Michael's attorneys in Los Angeles. A photo. Michael's heart stopped when he saw it. It showed him standing by the lake that very morning, taken from far away, without his knowledge. They're inside our perimeter, David said. The realization cracked something in Michael's chest. That night, Michael gathered everyone he trusted in the library. If something happens to me, he said softly, the truth must survive. His mother took his hands. Nothing will happen to you. Michael forced a small smile. Promise me. She nodded. Hours later, long after everyone had gone to bed, Michael sat at his piano. He played quietly, not for an audience, not for the world, just for himself. The melody was fragile, trembling, beautiful. Tears slid down his face as he whispered, I'm just a human being. The following afternoon, Michael received a phone call that chilled him to the bone. A distorted voice spoke. You were supposed to disappear quietly. Michael's breath caught. Who is this? He asked. Someone who warned you once. The line went dead. Michael sat in silence, the phone shaking in his hand. He realized then, this was not about business. This was not about contracts. This was about control. And he was refusing to surrender it. That evening, he met with his lawyers. I want everything documented, Michael said. Every message, every threat, every detail. They looked at him with concern. You understand what you're provoking? Michael met their eyes. I'm done being afraid. The next morning, an unfamiliar car was found parked outside the gates of Neverland. When security approached, it sped away. Inside the car, they later found a recorder. It was playing one sentence on a loop. You can't protect him forever. Michael listened to the recording, his heart pounding. They're playing with me, he whispered. But beneath the fear, something else was growing. Strength, resolve. He stood tall. They will not take my voice. As the sun set that night, Michael looked out over his land, the lights flickering on one by one. They tried to silence me on Christmas, he said. They failed. But the shadow was moving closer. And soon, Michael would be forced to make a decision that would define the rest of his life. The morning after the recorder was found, Michael did not leave his room. He sat by the window with a cup of tea growing cold in his hands, watching the fog slide slowly across the hills of Neverland. The world outside looked peaceful, untouched, and the contrast felt cruel. Inside his chest, the storm had fully arrived. He kept hearing the sentence from the recording. You can't protect him forever. Who was him? Michael? Or the boy inside him who still believed in love, in safety, in truth? His mother knocked gently and entered. You didn't sleep, she said. Michael shook his head. I don't know how to choose anymore, he whispered. She sat beside him and took his hands. You've been choosing your whole life, she said. Choosing kindness when the world expected anger. Choosing love when the world offered fear. Michael looked at her, eyes heavy. And now you choose yourself. The words settled in his heart. Later that day, Michael met with David and Karen in the small conference room near the library. Sunlight spilled across the table, but the mood was dark. They're escalating, David said. The car, the recorder, the calls, they want you destabilized. Michael nodded. They're testing how much I can take. Karen leaned forward. You don't have to take it alone. Michael inhaled slowly. I'm done hiding. I won't let them live in my silence anymore. They stared at him. What does that mean? David asked. It means we document everything, Michael said. We preserve the truth. Even if the world never hears it, it must exist. That afternoon, Michael began recording private sessions. Not interviews, not statements, but conversations with himself. He spoke of the threats, the betrayal at Christmas, the messages, the fear that followed him through the night. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes he whispered. Sometimes he stared into the camera for long minutes before speaking again. Each word was a piece of himself placed into the future. But the danger did not slow. That evening, Karen intercepted a package addressed directly to Michael. Inside was a small Christmas ornament. Red glass, gold ribbon, and a note, some traditions never end. Michael's hands shook as he held it. They're mocking me, he whispered. Night fell heavy over Neverland. Michael wandered the halls until he found himself in the small chapel on the property, a place he rarely entered, but one that felt right now. He sat alone in the last row. I'm afraid, he admitted softly. The room gave no answer, but in the quiet, he felt something inside him steady. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward anyway. 2 days later, a new development arrived, and it shook the foundation beneath his feet. One of his lawyers called urgently. Michael, someone is trying to obtain sealed documents related to your private security arrangements. They don't have the authority, but they're pushing. Michael's heart pounded. They're getting closer. That night, he gathered his most trusted circle again. I'm leaving Neverland for a while, Michael said. I need distance, space to breathe. Karen's eyes widened. Where will you go? Somewhere they don't expect, Michael replied. Within 48 hours, Michael vanished from public view. No announcements, no press, no explanation. The world wondered. The shadow followed. From a quiet location far from California, Michael continued recording his private messages. He wrote letters. He organized files. He preserved everything. One night, he stood by the ocean and watched the moon reflect across the water. I won't be erased, he whispered. Not this time. But even as he spoke the words, he felt it. They were still moving, still watching, still waiting. And soon, Michael would receive proof that the next confrontation would no longer be silent. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. No return address. No postage mark. No explanation for how it had crossed layers of security and distance to reach the quiet coastal house where Michael had been staying. It waited on the kitchen table when he returned from his morning walk, the ocean wind still on his jacket. Michael stopped in the doorway. His chest tightened. He knew before he touched it. This was not coincidence. Karen stood behind him. Don't open it, she whispered. Michael picked it up anyway. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small key taped to the bottom corner. The message read, We know where you are. We know what you're building. It ends now. Michael's breath left him in a slow, controlled exhale. David arrived minutes later. He examined the paper, the key, the edges of the envelope. They're inviting a meeting, he said. This is how they escalate. Michael stared at the key. Where does it go? He asked. David pointed to a line of numbers printed faintly at the bottom of the page. Storage unit. Industrial zone. Santa Monica. Karen shook her head. This is a trap. Michael's voice was steady. It's also an answer. They argued for an hour. Security risks. Unknown variables. Every reason not to go. Michael listened, then spoke quietly. If I keep running, they keep chasing. I want to look at the thing they're afraid of me seeing. The drive to Santa Monica felt unreal. Traffic, sunlight. Strangers walking dogs. A normal world that had no idea what was unfolding inside Michael's chest. They parked in front of the storage facility, a long concrete corridor of metal doors stretching in both directions. The number matched the paper. Michael slid the key into the lock. The door rolled open. Inside, boxes, old filing cabinets, a desk, a single chair, a small tape recorder on the tabletop. and photographs, dozens of them. Michael froze. They were pictures of him, walking through Neverland, sitting with children, speaking at charity events, laughing with fans, standing on stage beneath 1,000 lights. But beneath each photo, someone had written notes, dates, locations, observations. Someone had been building a file on his life. Karen covered her mouth. David whispered, "This isn't surveillance, this is obsession." Michael walked slowly through the room, touching nothing, his heart pounding in his ears. Then he saw the last box. Inside, copies of his private recordings, the same ones he had hidden, the ones he believed were safe. The floor seemed to fall away. "They're inside everything," he whispered. The tape recorder suddenly clicked on. A voice filled the room, calm, cold-controlled. "Michael Jackson, you're standing in the center of your own storm." Michael did not move. "You were warned. You were given space. Now the world you're building threatens the one we control." Michael finally spoke. "You don't own me." The voice on the tape paused, then continued. "We don't need to." The tape stopped. Silence returned, heavy and dangerous. Michael's hands were shaking, but something else was rising inside him, something stronger than fear. "They want me small," he said. Karen nodded. "They want you quiet." Michael looked at the photos, the files, the stolen pieces of his life. "No," he said. "They're afraid of me alive." They left the unit untouched and sealed the door again. Outside, Michael inhaled deeply, the ocean breeze filling his lungs. "I'm done being hunted," he said. That night, Michael made the decision he had been circling for weeks. He would not expose the truth publicly. Not yet. He would protect it, preserve it, build something so solid that even if he fell, the truth would stand. Back at the house, he worked until dawn, organizing, copying, encrypting, distributing fragments of the story to places that could not be erased in one move. Every step was careful, deliberate, quiet. At sunrise, Michael stood by the window, exhaustion pulling at his eyes. "I was afraid for so long," he whispered. "Now I'm ready." But the next move from the shadow came faster than he expected. That afternoon, his phone rang. A familiar voice spoke, the same man who had once betrayed him at the Christmas table. "Michael," the voice said, "they're done playing games." Michael closed his eyes. "Then so am I?" The line went dead. Hours later, a car followed him down the coastal road. Not hiding, not subtle, not patient. The chase was silent but unmistakable. Michael's heart thundered. He reached for the door handle of the house. When the car finally disappeared behind a curve, he knew what this meant. The confrontation he had feared and prepared for was finally coming.